I was born in rural Andhra Pradesh in a very small village, and where we had only a primary school, and went to high school in the neighboring village. And those days, even to have a pair of chappals was a luxury. So I tell my grandchildren that I got my first chappals at the age of 8. And probably that was the most happiest time, one of the most happy times of my life. I used to be very proud with working with those chappals. Then I did intermediate in the neighboring town, about 5 kilometers or so from our village. So first year intermediate I used to cycle there, and the second year stayed in a rented room. And after intermediate, I was not qualified immediately to join engineering because of the minimum age criteria they had. In those days, you should have a minimum age to join. And then I think when I finished my intermediate, I was only 14, so very young. So then fortunately, what happened is that Andhra University College of Engineering, that year only they relaxed the age. Oh. So it was informed to me by one of my seniors that there is an age relaxation, and I immediately applied and got admission into College of Engineering, Andhra University.
This is in Vizag?
College of Engineering, Andhra University.
This is in Vizag or where?
It is in Vizag. It is in Vizag.
Okay.
Then my father, who was a farmer, who got educated only up to class 5, his dream was that his son should pass high school. So that was his dream. He could not think higher than that. So he put in a lot of effort in motivating me to study well in school. For example, he used to wake me up at 4 in the morning, and with a kerosene lamp, it's all dark around and you are afraid. So he used to sit next to me so that I can study without fear. So that training helped me to focus on studies, and then it became very easy. So I was privileged to top my school for high school, and then go for intermediate, and then get admission to College of Engineering, Andhra University. And then after this bachelor, my father being a farmer, for them irrigation supervisor or overseer is a big man.
Okay.
So he was very keen that I should join the irrigation department, the government. And I got an offer also to join the irrigation department. But I met one colonel, military engineering services, who was introduced to me through somebody. Then when he saw my academic record, he said joining MES or government department is not for you. Your academic background is very good, so you should go for a master's. So my father was not in agreement with that, because he also said he cannot support me for a master's degree, that would be difficult. But then I said there are some scholarships available.
Okay.
So anyway, finally I convinced him and went to Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, for my master's. Then that time there were 3 different programs in structural engineering, in hydraulics, and in geotechnical. Those days we used to call it soil mechanics. The soil mechanics program was 9 months plus 6 months of practical training. Whereas the other programs were 1.5 years plus 6 months of practical training. So because this is a shorter program, so I chose soil mechanics. And then, but unfortunately, the criterion they adopted for scholarships was also the means. So in the interview, when one of the faculty members asked me what your father does, so I told him in agriculture, and then we own 10 acres of land, I told him. Oh, then he said 10 acres is a lot of land, and so that means you are a rich farmer. Your father is a rich farmer. So they didn't give me the scholarship. So that was very hard. Then afterwards I met the head of the department and explained to him. Then he was very kind, and then he found some 40 rupees per month scholarship instead of 150 rupees, that was the norm. Anyway, somehow managed. And a friend of mine who was on leave from Benares Hindu University to study the masters at IIT Institute of Science, he told me that there is a faculty position vacant, lecturer's position vacant in Benares. So I applied and then got an interview, and then afterwards got selected as a lecturer. So that is how I started my teaching career at Benares University. And then because I finished school early by jumping classes, then I was only 19 plus when I started as a lecturer. So that was a scary experience because I was asked to teach final year classes. And some of the students were older than. So in the class. And then they used to make fun of me when I turned to the board to write. Then we had a very well-known picture starred by Raj Kapoor in those days. And there's a very famous song, Raju Mera Naam. So they used to sing that song. So that is how I started my academic career. Maybe I'll stop here. Maybe you have something to ask about what I have said.
Okay, sir. Okay. BHU was your first teaching assignment.
Yes.
Then you went for a doctoral program to Germany.
Yes.
You did it in Karlsruhe, University of Karlsruhe. Huh?
Yeah, that's good.
That's, okay. Why did you choose Germany? Because probably that was the time US education was, many people, went to US, I think probably even your contemporaries. But why Germany?
Yes.
Is there some special motivation for selecting?
See, while at Benares, I saw an advertisement in the papers for the German government scholarships.
Okay.
So I said, why not I apply? I didn't know much about Germany in those days.
Okay.
So, but anyway, I thought that the fact that they are offering scholarships for Indian students, it must be interesting. And then, what is another interesting fact is that I just thought that what will they ask me in the interview? I felt that because the scholarships were open, I thought that what will they ask me? Then I felt that they will definitely ask me why I want to go to Germany. Just like you asked why I went to Germany. Then I was looking for an explanation for this question, and then I was looking for literature to identify a professor in Germany with whom I want to work. Then those days Germans were not publishing in English journals, but with great difficulty I found one article by a professor named Schulze. He is from University of Aachen. So when I went for the interview, promptly they asked me, why do you want to go to Germany? So then I said I want to work with Professor Schulze in University of Aachen. I could see in the face of the people, especially the German person who was sitting there, he was so happy because he didn't expect me to know the name of the professor and the place I want to go. Then I already knew that I am going to be selected because from the response, because they can't ask technical questions, because there are 25 scholarships for all branches, including science, arts, engineering, medicine, everything like that. So that was an experience. So I got selected. So then I just went, and we were all taken by ship in those days. You know, we went from Bombay to Marseille, and then from Marseille in France, we were driven by bus to a place where we attended a German language course, 4 months. That was very interesting. Then so you learn German, and it's a very intensive training. So the teachers won't speak to you in English at all, even though they know English. So they make you. So after 4 months, even though I wanted to, I said I want to go to Aachen, University of Aachen, because another person from CSIR was already selected for Aachen. They sent me to Karlsruhe, which turned out to be better, because Karlsruhe Institute was bigger, more activity, and the professor was a very well-known Professor Loising. Later he became the German Minister for Science and Technology. Very famous man. And of course he was also the rector or the president of the university, and he was also president of the rectors conference and president of the scientific advisory committee to the German government, and so on and so forth.
He was a member of the CDU or SPD?
No, not at all. He was very difficult to see him in the first place. So I went to the institute, and then the number 2 person, Professor Linde, who was literally running the institute, he received me, and then they showed me a place, my room, and showed me the library and the lab, and here you are. So they won't tell you anything, what you do or anything like that. You have to figure it out. So that was a new experience for me, because in India, everybody, you are guided, you know. Then everybody is busy, nobody is talking to you, and then nobody told me what are the timings. So then I figured out myself, coming very early, to find out that the first person used to come at 6 in the morning to the institute, and the last person was probably leaving the institute by 9 in the evening. So those days, Germany was in the process of building up, and they were really working very hard. Actually, the week was 6.5 days a week. So including Sunday mornings, we used to work. So that was very good for me, because there was a lot of work being done. And then quickly to conclude on this, then very important thing has happened, that after a month or so I was allowed to see the professor. Then I told him in my broken German that saying, "Sir, I want to do PhD." Then he said, "Mr. Raju, PhD will take 6 years here. And before you can do PhD, you must learn the practice of geotechnical engineering or foundation engineering." Then I told him, "Sir, I'm already on leave and have a job, and they will not give me 6 years leave. That won't be possible." Then he took pity on me and said, "I'll make an exception. You find a topic for research and convince me that that topic is worth doing research for a PhD." So the entire responsibility was on me. So after 4 months, I informed them that I am now have a topic for research. And then I've written something together, first in English, and then took somebody's help to translate it into German. Then they said, "Professor is too busy to read that, so you have to give a seminar." So the seminar was arranged, and the seminar has to be given in German. So it was very tough, and I was also not very clear about the topic. And then I was reading it instead of speaking. And the whole thing took 1.5 hours. So at the end of 1.5 hours, the professor stood up and said, Mr. Raju, a seminar is given for 30 minutes. And then he walked off from the room. So I knew that my seminar was a disaster. So I went to my room and then literally cried because you are in a strange country, no friends, and what to do. Then I continued my efforts, and then looking at the work done earlier in the institute, the publications and all that. Then I said, I'm probably now ready. That was about 10 months after I went there. Meanwhile, the scholarship giver, German Academic Exchange Service, they said that your scholarship will be extended only if your professor says that you can work for PhD. Otherwise, you have to go back. Then they said, even for our own German students, we cannot say that. So how can we say that you can work for your PhD?
Okay.
So I'll give you another semester. So this time, of course, I was well prepared. I was clear about my topic. And I practiced and recorded on tape recorders. Those days we used to have these tape recorders. Several times I practiced, and then I gave a mock seminar to my other German students who were doing PhD.
Okay.
And then when the final seminar came, I took 29 minutes 30 seconds. And the professor discussed 1.5 hours on my topic. And then they said, yes, now you can do PhD. I think that was one of the most important things that happened in my life. Because now then in the process of this 1 year, I learned how to be independent and how to be self-motivating, and then how to work and how to present things, prepare slides and so many other things I learned. Then they said, but you have to also learn practice because we can't give PhD without the practice for you. So then they immediately associated me with the consultancy projects of the professor. So I used to go to project sites and then write. The professor was also doing international projects.
Okay.
So the reports had to be written in English, and hardly anybody knew English. So it was good that I was writing part of those reports and giving it to the professor.
Okay.
But then to help my thesis work, there is a system of part-time students helping research scholars. So I had a research project funding, and with that funding, I used to get part-time students to help. Sometimes I had even as many as 6 students helping with the experiments, preparing the samples, running the experiment, and then doing the computer analysis and all that they used to do. So to cut the long story short, I learned a lot of practical aspects. Plus, I was able to complete my PhD in 3 years, 2 months.
Oh.
That was a record for that institute, because everybody before took, as Professor said, 5 to 6 years. So probably I was the 25th or 26th PhD from that institute. So that is how it was. And then I returned back to Benares after PhD.
During this time, Germany must have been totally different from this Germany that we see now. Because, immediately after, almost 20 years after the war ended, and then there are a lot of, the division of the Germany to 2 halves, and also this Berlin blockade and whatnot. I think they were practically, the economic situations were very bad at that time. But how do you compare the position, the Germany of that time with what you see at present?
Yes. What happened is that by the time I went, it was 63 December I went, and then, so 64 May I was in the institute. then still lots of things were being rebuilt. A lot of Germany was destroyed. If, for example, when we were attending the German classes in Goethe Institute, we were put in private houses. And most private houses didn't have even a bath. They had only a toilet. For bathing, you have to go out to a place and then pay money for it and then take a bath. It was like that. But still, I think people were happy because they were quickly forgetting the trauma of the war. And then there was a lot of progress, a lot of action. People had work. And they were seeing better days. Month by month, year by year, things were getting better. So you see, human nature is that it's all relative. If you are already very prosperous, then you want more prosperity. But if you are having less, then even a little more will make a great difference. So that way I did not notice that. But what I also noticed is that once they become friendly, they are very friendly. Initially, there was a distance. But later, when you are humble and then when you go and talk to them and interact with them, and then they were very, very friendly.
So were there any other Indian students during that time when you were there?
In the entire university, if I am not mistaken, people who were doing PhD, there were 2 more students, Indians. So 3 of us used to meet, and there were a couple of undergraduate students, but we did not have much contact with them. So it was very, very, actually very interesting. Karlsruhe has a population of 250,000.
Okay.
And when my wife joined me in 1965, and she used to move with her sari, she was the only lady in the whole of Karlsruhe, an Indian lady, moving around, in a sari, and then people used to stare at her. Even tram drivers would, look at stop and look at it, something like that. The local newspaper wrote an article about her, and because then she started helping in a nursery or a kindergarten. That was the situation.
Okay.
But slowly, many people have come, and of course now everywhere.
So then back in BHU, how long did you work before coming into IIT Madras?
I sent to BHU in 2067 June, and then I was given the indication that I'll be made a reader immediately after my PhD, because probably in those days I was one of the very few people with a PhD in the Department of Engineering at BHU. But for some reason, it's getting delayed. And I was selected as a reader in Regional Engineering College, Allahabad. But then the director of the institute would say, no, you don't go to Allahabad. We will make you a reader here itself. And all that he used to say, but still things were not happening. Then someone told me that there is an advertisement from IIT Madras for faculty position. So then I said, why not? I applied. But actually that advertisement was only for a professor. But anyway, still I applied. And then Dr. A. Ramchandran was the director. Okay. So then the interview also went off very well. And then I was leaving the room. Dr. Ramchandran called me back. And he said, Dr. Raju, how is it that you are still a lecturer? He asked me. So I didn't know what to say. So I didn't say anything, I think. So anyway, then I got appointment letter. And then I joined IIT Madras. That's how.
Probably that was the time when there were large number of German professors. Then also the laboratory were all those our labs were being built. There are senior technicians from Germany where they are.
Yes.
I think it would have been almost, the conditions in a German city have been recreated in IIT Madras for us because of the large number of families.
No, actually, it was a great change from Benares University to IIT Madras. Benares University also has got a beautiful campus, some 1100 or 1400 acre campus, very green. But Madras was more focused. And then the department also was small. And there were not many professors. And also most of the people were working for their PhD. Still working, but they were doing all the work of building classrooms and establishing laboratories, and they did a lot of work. So I was received with some sort of a skepticism because many were there before me who were aspiring to become assistant professors, but they could not become because they don't have a PhD, and their PhD was getting delayed. So though they did not say so much openly, but I could see that there was a certain amount of reluctance to welcome me there. But anyway, then I was fortunate to be able to interact with them and then also help them with their PhD work to some extent. And then there was an opportunity to do consulting projects. Professor Varghese was the head of the department.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I came, then there was no aid to soil mechanics in those days. It was only for structures and hydraulics. So German staff were there in there. And then this project was a fertilizer plant at Tuticorin, and there was a naughty issue to be sorted out. So Professor Varghese asked me to handle that, and we successfully did that. So that gave more rapport with the head of the department and in the department. And of course, I maintained contact with the German faculty because I really like Germany. So Germany is like a second home for me even today. So we had very, very good time, excellent friends, and learned a lot. And a lot of changes have happened in Germany on the positive side. So on the whole, I think it was really very good. And then along with the activities in the department, our consultancy was picking up very well. There was a major initiative with L&T. L&T did not have a geotechnical engineer in their office in those days, foundation engineer. So I used to go and sit half a day in their office in a week. So like that, things were getting multiplied and the number of people were coming.
But the institute, with so many German professors here, do you see a lot of comparison between a technical university in Germany and IIT Madras? Because I think there is some sort of a similarity between the two, TU and IIT Madras.
My understanding is that mostly the German faculty, the professors, even though we called them professors, some senior people, they were more focused on developing the facilities, building the laboratories, and less of teaching. Whereas most of the teaching was done by the Indian faculty. I am not sure whether German faculty took any regular lectures. You were in structures, and then maybe there was one structure.
Professor used to take classes.
But they were not already professors in Germany. They became professors subsequent. Professor Ruwe was in hydraulics. Later he became a professor in Aachen as a full professor, chair professor. So that way it was very good. And then it was also a wonderful experience with Dr. A. Ramachandran, a very outstanding rector. In 1973, I was the Secretary JEE All India, and at that time we were the whatever it's called, coordinating institute or the main institute conducting this. So I used to go to him. He would smilingly and very promptly simply write on every paper which you take to him, yes, AR, he would use it. So prompt. It was such a pleasure. It was a really very good time we had.
And I think in the civil engineering department, I think within a very short time, you had a good name as a good teacher, a very good consultant, and also a good researcher, trying to help those who are doing their PhD at that time. So, after establishing yourself as a very senior consultant and also a good senior faculty, shift to ocean engineering must have been a little, I don't know, how did you take that decision to move on?
Yeah. No, actually, what was happening is that this civil engineering, of course, the consulting is also a teamwork. Everything is a teamwork. We used to work in teams. And then what happened is that there was an opening or an interview for a professor in the Ocean Engineering Center. So the Ocean Engineering Center was established as one of the advanced centers.
Yes.
And each IIT got one center, and so IIT Madras got Ocean Engineering. And they were not getting people with expertise in ocean engineering because ocean engineering was not globally also not a well-developed subject. It was just picking up. So when the interview was there, then I went for the interview there, and then they offered me a professorship there. Then they also said that this is a challenge, you have to build a new institution. And Professor Mitra from IIT Kharagpur was there as in charge of the Ocean Engineering Center, but he was already retired. So then I was joining as the next person with him. So I thought that this is a good opportunity to extend into a new area because foundation engineering, geotechnical engineering, also you have to deal with coastal and offshore foundations. So I took a decision to take that offer because I didn't have the offer for a professorship in civil engineering yet. Probably it would have come after a year or two, but anyway, so I went there. And then, by then, Professor Idichandy has come as director. So that is how in ocean engineering he supported that very well. Then he visited the Ocean Engineering Center. We had some faculty, not many. And after the meeting was over, after he interacted with us, for some reason he looked at me. I was not the head. He told me, Professor Raju, you please send me a minutes of this meeting. I was surprised because he didn't ask the head of the department, he is asking me. Then I consulted the head of the department and I told him. He said, yes, please prepare. And I prepared the minutes and showed to him. And then sent it to Professor Idichandy. And Professor Mitra retired. Okay. Then Professor Idichandy asked me to take over as head of the Ocean Engineering Center. Then we were looking for more people and realized that we should take people who are already very good in their respective fields and ask them to reorient themselves to ocean engineering. That's how we built. You are a part of that. So
one of the probably legendary projects was the immediately after you came in and also taking a lot of interest in ocean engineering. I think you could convince the DSC to support a huge project on wave energy. I think it has come to this logical conclusion of establishing or installing a wave energy caisson of Trivandrum.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that? I think audience will be very, very happy to listen to it because it was one of the very successful projects I think.
Yeah. See, what happened is we were doing simultaneously building up the Ocean Engineering Center, doing the wave basin and covering the wave basin. And then, for example, this I want to mention before going to wave energy projects. This is very interesting. Then the normal way of covering a basin of that size in those days was to put a steel truss with AC sheeting.
Correct.
And then I felt that as a technological institute we should do something different. Then our good friend A. Ramakrishna, who was at that time in ECC, I talked to him. He said we should put a folded plate roof, concrete roof, 36 meters span, cast on the ground, lifted and placed in position. But that was not done in the country before. So we are going to do it for the first time. Then I went to Prof. and said, this is the situation, this has not been done before. But he said, are you confident of doing it? I said, yes. Then he said, immediately, please go ahead. So then we did that. And I think it has come out quite well. So that was one thing. Prof. also said, we are also trying, said you have to focus on some areas. You cannot do everything. Then I said, those days ocean energy was the fashion. So people were talking of OTEC, then that is ocean thermal energy, wave energy, and tidal energy. Tidal energy was already quite advanced. That there was already a plant in France, tidal energy plant. Then actually, Prof. used to participate in Saturday meetings where we had invited different people from different departments and we used to talk about OTEC and wave energy. At the same time, the Department of Ocean Development was started in Government of India. There was also a Department of Non-Conventional Energy in the ministry already. That was before the Ocean Energy Department. And they sponsored a project to us on OTEC for discussions and things like that. Then later ocean development came. And then we said that we should do something substantial. Then I was also on the sort of Ocean Commission. I was also a member of the Ocean Commission. And also there was the National Institute of Oceanography. I was also a member there. The governing, I think research council they used to call it. Okay. Then we made a proposal for this wave energy project and we said we'll do a pilot plant. The best wave conditions, relatively best wave conditions were available off the coast of Trivandrum, overlong. So we proposed that and then they sanctioned that. So that is how that project started and then many people joined. Then Ravindran joined as a DSO, Principal Scientific Officer. I don't remember when you actually joined, but you also. So that is how the project started, and that was also a great experience. He wanted to build a huge caisson and how to build this, and nobody has done it before, not only in India, anywhere in the world. There again, Mr. Ramakrishna from L&T, he came forward. And then our accounts people, they said, how can you give the job without quotations and you're only a single person? Then I said, okay, let us go to site. So I took our accounts people to Vizhinjam or Kovalam and showed him the place and said, here we have to build something like how many story structure, I don't exactly remember now, but huge scale we have to build. You tell me how we can get it. Nobody is prepared to do it. Even one person we have to persuade. And so they appreciated that. In fact, they immediately said, yes sir, this is the way we should do it. And then all of you worked very hard. So then the project was.
But Professor Indiresan and you had a very very close relationship. That has definitely resulted in many, not only projects but also, for example, building itself.
Yes.
Building that we are sitting is again
Actually, this ICSR building came much later, not during Professor Indiresan's time.
Okay. Oh, I see.
Okay, and then in Professor Indiresan's time, many things has happened. It was very interesting how I think he was so proactive, so supportive, and probably I think in some way we were on the same page. For example, he made me chairman Research and Awards.
Yes.
So I wanted to see the entire campus, of course, that anyway we were doing walking. But I wanted to walk all along the boundary of the campus to see the boundary wall, what is the condition, and then some people were making holes in the boundary wall and then trespassing and all that. So on Sunday, along with my wife, I told her, let us walk along the boundary. And suddenly I find Professor Indiresan and Mrs. Indiresan doing the same thing. So we really met at that boundary. So that is one thing. And then the second instance is the SAC building, the Student Activity Center. That was big during its time. That was a Silver Jubilee occasion and the government gave extra grants for the Student Activity Center. So next day was the inauguration. President of India was inaugurating it. So sometime around 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the evening, earlier we have seen all the arrangements. So I felt that I should see whether everything is okay now or what is really happening. I reached there at 9:30. Promptly I find Professor Indiresan and Mrs. Indiresan there. So he was also trying to make sure of that. That every way he was very supportive. And any paper I take for approval, he would immediately sign without even reading anything, looking at it. Okay. So I asked him, sir, one day, how are you just approving it even without reading what I have written? He said, there is no need because I know that you will not ask anything unreasonable. So what you are asking. So that way,
that is the confidence he had in you.
He was extremely supportive. And that's how I learned that you have to be very supportive later, your colleagues, you have to trust them and you have to empower them. That has helped me a lot in subsequent years. Then Student Activity Center was actually planned subsequently, and I think it was Professor L.N. Ramurthy's time when he was the dean. Some planning was done. But then I think Professor Radhakrishna of Mechanical Engineering also was there, I think. Then I took over as dean. Then this was still under construction. So we used to visit and then made some changes and then some developments and all that. Professor Aravindan checked all the designs for that building. So that was a great tradition at IIT Madras. All of the faculty used to get involved with the campus development and checking designs and all that. So that way it was very good. Then I moved into the first time into the ICSR.
Coming back to ocean engineering, I think we had two phases of German assistance. I think this has also been during your time about these assistance programs are planned. And of course, post-graduation was very, very supportive. I think many in the campus perhaps were not very happy that ocean engineering is, getting a lot of visibility and also developmental funds, whether it is the India funds or the assistance from Germany. How were you able to manage the German assistance?
Actually, what happened was that, whenever these Germans used to come, and especially from the German Agency for Development, they used to visit different places, and I think they also visited ocean engineering. And I used to interact with them. So I told them that this is a new area, and Germany is also developing in this area, and we should get assistance from Germany. But then they said that the program of assistance is closed. At that time, they were only doing exchange of faculty. So some faculty members were selected, to go to Germany, and then for 2 months, 3 months like that. But then finally, I convinced them that just because you have some time limitations, that Ocean Engineering Center should not be denied getting assistance, because without that it would be very difficult. So because random wave plume and wave generators for the basin and all that, it would have been very difficult for us. And then they agreed, and then they sent a German professor from Berlin to visit us. He came and they gave a report. He supported it, and then finally they agreed to fund this project. Yep. So I think that was a very useful inputs that we got from them. And I think as far as I know, probably subsequently NSTL must have built some of these random wave facilities and all that, but at that time probably we were the only institution.
In fact, even in Germany they were not having a similar facility. So that was the magnanimity of the German assistance.
That was the way we were successful. And I think Professor Indiresan also strongly supported that. During his period only we got this system.
Sir, during your time as Dean ICSR, I think the PIs at this project coordinators were actually liberated from a lot of strangleholds with the bureaucracy. A lot of changes that have been brought in, and as you used to say that a manager should not be a power center, should be a service center. I think that type of a culture you could probably instill in some of the officers here. That was a great change. How did you bring about? One was that a visit to Trivandrum is one thing that has changed their attitude. But there are many things which from here itself we could change.
See, when I joined IIT Madras, and that was in 1970, then ICSR was not yet started at that time. I think it came later, a couple of years later, 73 or so. Then, if you get a project, sponsored project, if you want to take a scientific officer or someone into the project, the registrar told me that it will take a year, the process, because we have to advertise in the papers and then whatever. It's very long. So I was shocked. Oh, you can wait for a year to start a project. So anyway, then ICSR started, and then they were slowly improving the processes, and then, but still it was taking some time, couple of months to recruit. And I said, what is there in recruiting a project officer? Finally, it should be the choice of the principal investigator, PI. So I made a proposal. We used to have an ICSR committee. I made a proposal that we will have a standing committee for recruitment of the project officers, which will meet every Friday or Saturday. And then in this standing committee, then of course the PI will be also a member, and the concerned head of department, maybe somebody could be a member. So we will give the choice, and then this is sort of like a walk-in interview sort of a thing. Even without advertisement, people can apply or whatever way. Okay. And then every week we'll have this standing committee meeting. So therefore, if somebody finds a person on a Monday, by Saturday the appointment letter would be given, or even Friday, Saturday appointment letter would be given, because it's only a matter of just the only condition we said was it should not be related to you and you should be qualified. You should have minimum qualifications. That was accepted. I think I should say also Prof. NVC Swami, who was the director at that time, he also supported us to have these processes. And then the people were happy, and we said we'll trust people. Some people may misuse but doesn't matter. So, but that is better to trust. But I must say that that time when I took over, our consulting value was about 1 crore in those days. Now it must be 100 crores or whatever it is. In 5 years, it increased by 5 times. So 1 crore became 5 crores in 5 years. That is a phenomenal growth. Then sponsored research also grew maybe 3 times or something like that. I don't remember the figure. And also that was a very nice experience. We had good people, and I think it worked well. It worked well.
You had a very, enormous influence of a lot of youngsters, of course. That was one of that. Many people, you mentored, later on, they've grown in various areas. And how did you inculcate this culture of supporting and trusting people with, you have a goal, and you mentor people so that we can reach the goal that you set for yourself.
So what I learned from my superiors or people who mentored me was that most important thing is trust. And trust and empowerment. You have to trust and you have to empower people. And that's what we did, and it worked very well. So therefore, what I learned from my mentors, I just passed it on. And so I already gave you the examples of Dr. A. Ramchandran and Professor Idichandy, and what they taught us how to go about it. So therefore, it was quite easy, and then they grew afterwards by their own merit, of course, and by the, of course, teamwork. Teamwork is also very important. You remember when we did all these both consulting projects and then sponsored projects, we were such big teams. I remember that when we were doing consulting, then doing the instrumentation part, you did the instrumented one jetty in Paradeep. I remember that, very path-breaking studies. And Aravindan and Meher Prasad and Belu, Gandhi. So it was such a wonderful thing, and also number of project officers. I remember, I think maximum number we had was about 12 or so in those days. So it's all, I think it's all teamwork and the merit of the people by themselves. Most people are really good. Even today I am seeing it, youngsters, you put them in the right place and then tell them how to go about and then encourage them, they will learn very fast. So we have a lot of talent in this country.
But yesterday night I was thinking about this Paradeep project that we have done.
Yes.
Even today, I can't believe a load cell which has been put in the soil for several months.
Yes.
Worked very well. After we dug up everything and then again did the measurements.
Oh, really?
Yes. In fact, the load cell was designed by us. Everything was done by us.
Yes, of course.
And I think we went there after the dredging was over, and then about 6 months. It took almost 6 months. Raju and myself went, and our heart was beating very fast to find out whether it is going to work or not, because otherwise 6 months effort has already been lost.
Sure.
Fortunately, it was working so well. And
Perfect.
because it could get exactly the type of predicted load that was coming on that tie roads. It is a wonderful experience. And these are all, many people have not even attempted to do such work anywhere in the world, perhaps. That is why it has become an ASC publication.
Right. See, it is first of all, recognizing that there is a need to, first of all, recognizing that that particular system will work in a particular day. That was the one part. Then afterwards you have some youngsters, I think, to do a structural analysis or whatever analysis appropriate analysis to prove it through analysis, but finally to prove it through measurements. So several roles. So initial identification, maybe I could see the concept. Then the analysis was, I think, done by Sundaravadi Nelu, this structural analysis, and then you pioneered the instrumentation part and did that. That is how it should be. It's always a teamwork.
A few words about NIOT, because that is again you played a major role in bringing NIOT to Chennai, to IIT Madras, and because it has grown much more perhaps than budget of NIOT is at least 2-3 times more than that of what was your
See, it was like this, that I was on the Ocean Commission as a member, and Professor P. Ramarao became Secretary DST as well as Secretary DOD, Ocean Development. And we used to discuss in various meetings and all that. And then during the discussions, it came out saying that Ocean Development, Department of Ocean Development needs an institution of its own, funded by them. Much beyond the Ocean Engineering Center. Ocean Engineering Center was, of course, doing this wave energy project and all that. So then it was decided to start NIOT. And I told Professor Ramarao the best way to start NIOT is to locate it on campus. And I was also Dean ICSR. So we said we'll put one extra floor on the ICSR building, and you please pay for that floor. And then he immediately accepted it, and Professor Swami also accepted the proposal. And that is how NIOT started in our campus. And then naturally they grew to a particular size that the space was no more adequate. Then they moved out and they found land, and then of course Ravindran has taken it forward as the director of NIOT. That is how. So that was a good move. Then such experiences I could replicate later more effectively in Delhi, of co-locating the facilities with an institution.
In fact, that is my next question. From IIT Madras, after you went as director of IIT Delhi, and you had a full camp there. Of course, definitely when somebody goes from an institute to another institute, best practices of the previous institute will be you'll try to replicate in the new institute, because though it is an established institute already. How did the faculty of IIT Delhi receive the changes that you try to bring about, or the best practices that you have from IIT Madras you try to implement it in IIT Delhi? What was the type of reaction from the faculty, students, as well as the staff?
First I would say that I would never thought that I would go to IIT Delhi as a director. This was not in my thinking or radar or whatever it was. By the time I was selected at IIT Delhi, I was Dean ICSR, and as senior-most Dean, I used to officiate when director was out of station. So then I think when I was invited, those days you cannot apply for a directorship. Today I think people can apply. Then anyways, nominations were there. I think I don't know who all nominated, but definitely Professor Indresan through his channels he nominated me, and then he invited for an interview, and of course there it went very well. The interview went very well. Then I received this invitation to at IIT Delhi. Then after going there, obviously you have all the experiences at IIT Madras of working in the civil engineering department, ocean engineering center, chairman estate and works, which I did, and then Dean ICSR. So all these things are practically know. Then first thing I started was to visit all the departments and then and centers and meet all of them. Systematically, first meet the faculty, then meet the staff, and meet the research students, and go around the labs and see what is. Then go around the hostels, because that was my hobby to walk. So I've seen every nook and corner of the campus. Then quickly realized that there is a backlog of faculty selections. And so simple things, then we immediately went through the process of faculty selections. You know, generally, nowadays maybe things have changed, but in those days, you call all the faculty, interviews will run from morning to evening, say 9 o'clock to evening 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. They won't tell when your turn will come. So people are just waiting from 9 to 6, some of them. So I just thought about it and then said, why not we give them a time slot? So everybody was given a time slot of 15-20 minutes. So they exactly know when they are required to be there. Otherwise, such small things made a huge impact. Going to the departments and talking to the faculty in detail and asking their grievances and hearing patiently what they have to say. You know, every semester I visited every department and center and central facilities. Because you know that what and how to get rid of obsolete equipment. Because at least when I went there, and it may be true with most institutions even today, everywhere we find a lot of obsolete equipment occupying space. So then I said, why is it lying here? And then this administration will say that you can't write off easily, there is a big procedure for that and all that. Then I said, I want a very quick solution, and finally I told the engineering unit, they used to have cement godowns. I said, why is this godown here, such a huge godown? No sir, we supply cement because they may not bring quality cement. I said, forget about it, now there is enough quality cement available in the market. Maybe in olden days it was different. So I emptied the cement godown and said, shift everything which is not functional to the godown. So 30% of the space which was occupied by obsolete equipment became free. So suddenly imagine that if we have so much space which is unutilized, it becomes useful. So all those things made people happy and they cooperated very well. There are so many issues that will crop up. We have to think out of the box. So for example, the campus was not green enough compared to Madras campus. So then I told my board, the first meeting, we'll plant 1,000 trees every year on the Delhi campus. Earlier they were doing maybe 100 trees a year. And then made the board members plant trees. Started with them, with the chairman of the board. Then a small committee and told them, I want your help. We need to plant 1,000 trees. So they planted 2,200 trees in the first year. So then it became the norm. 2,200 is the norm. So 5 years, I think we planted about 11,000 trees or something. Same thing, you know, with bathrooms, hostels. If you go to the kitchen, you find that tubelights are not working, fan is not working, exhaust fan is not there. It's all, you know, then with a vengeance, you get all those things renovated and things like that. So that will win a lot of friends, because people who are working in the kitchen, they are happy. Then once they are happy, they treat the students well, they cook better. So like that. And then construction, because we said we had 2,400 students. Then I went in 1995, and 2,200 employees, 120 acres of land. So underutilization. So I told them that we should aim to double the student strength in my period of 5 years. So then you need more hostel rooms. So I asked the engineering unit, how are you building? So they said they're building 50 rooms or so for the girl hostel for the last 2.5 years. I said that is too slow, we need something different. Then we planned bigger hostels and then got the bigger builders, and finally with our friends' help got L&T to do hostels. And they build very fast. We were building them, Sometimes one has to look at the minor things. Using my experience, in addition to this planting saplings or trees, I used to find the cattle on campus. Late nights, not during the day. See what the neighboring villagers were doing. They will connive with the security, and though we have cattle traps, in the night they will put a plank on that and drive the cattle and take them away in the morning. So I used to come sometimes from a late flight to the campus and see the cattle there. So then I told the security officer, this is very serious and I don't want to see any cattle on campus. Then that made a huge difference, because without cattle the plants started growing themselves. That was one important thing. The same thing also was with the toilets, that they were not in a proper condition. And then, so I literally took the institute engineer with me, and then I said, if they are not fixed within the next 2 weeks, I will start cleaning them, and then you may not have any option to join me in doing so. So that worked, and then they improved. But again, they go bad. So in many ways, academically also recruiting faculty, and some of the innovations we did was that new faculty were informed immediately after the selection, after the interview itself. See, earlier people will be waiting and sitting in the admissions office to find out, have I got selected, am I promoted and all that. I told the heads of the departments, at the end of the day itself, you just call them and tell them that they are already selected. And that made a difference, because then they are happy and they will join you. And similarly with people who were promoted also, without waiting for the registrar to send formal letters, I used to send letters to them, congratulatory letters saying that I'm happy to inform you that you have been elevated so and so, and then the formal letter will follow. So all those small things, I think, motivated people.
Sir, this is my last question.
Yes.
Looking back, what do you think is your most unique contribution to IIT Madras? I know it will be very difficult because there are large number of contributions that you did to this institute. What do you think is the most unique, a single contribution to us?
You mean to say that the most important thing in my view?
In your view, yes.
What I feel is that I mean, on the whole, being open-minded and, as I said already, mutual trust and common good and such things, they have helped. Certainly, I think Ocean Engineering Center is certainly a very good example of creating a great facility. Probably one of the best of its kind in this part of the world. That is one contribution. And I think also the number of colleagues who have really done well and risen to higher levels and then to higher contributions. So I would say human resource I'll put first. Whatever we have been able to create. Then establishing the facilities, brand building, to create, even I feel that what we have achieved together in the consultancy front and sponsor research front also is quite substantial. And I think when the wave energy project was given, probably at that time that was the biggest project
Sir, in conclusion, would you like to, because this will be viewed by many people,
Yes.
this is a part of an audio book on IIT Madras, published by Heritage Center.
Yeah.
Do you have any concluding remarks to make?
I think already said that in the previous last point. I think what I said, and I think what I've experienced is that human tendency is to think that what we got is taken for granted, and what we did not get looks very big, and then we always expect things to happen faster than what they happen. But I think the wisdom lies in accepting things as they are and then trying to improve and focus on teamwork and then mutual benefit and the common good, as I said already, and also finally the good of the nation. That should be uppermost in our mind.
Sir, one thing which I did not ask you is about about your 3 children.
Yes.
I think you should tell something about that.
Actually, it made a great difference for them to grow up in the campus. Really, I think one of the important things for us as seniors is to get faculty. So I used to tell the people, if you join as a faculty, you have all the freedom, number one, and your children will get good education and career, and which are both very important. So that way, we were fortunate that we have 3 children, son and 2 daughters. Son and the elder daughter both did undergrad at IIT Madras, which is quite unique. And the younger one did masters in mathematics at IIT, and all of them are doing well. So I think definitely the campus education and the campus living has made a significant contribution for their growth. And also they imbibe the value systems that we follow in the campus. And I think it has been a great experience. I can't think of a better place for children to grow than a campus like IIT.
Thank you very much, sir. I think.
Thank you, Chandy, to have time with you together.
It's so nice that after a long time we are sitting and talking.
Yeah. We will continue to keep in touch.
Sure.
Thank you and all the best to you and your family. Thank you. Bye.